Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the Defence Summit. This is the fifth webinar today of an action-packed day of events from us at Coptrz. My name's Sam Denniff. I am the Business Development Manager for Public Safety and Defence in Coptrz. So work with police, fire, search and rescue teams, and in the military sector as well. So we've got a bunch of great guests here today to run us through some of the most interesting developments in the defence and security world. So in no particular order, we've got Soren, who is the Sales Director at Lorenz Technology. Really interesting bit of kit that he's going to run us through in a moment. We've got Matt, who is the MD of Brigantes, who work primarily in the defence world with the Ministry of Defence and provide a lot of on-the-man drone equipment. And then we've got Dave, who is the CEO, I believe, of Planck. And Planck is an autonomous takeoff and landing system. Again, very high demand, a lot of interest in the military world. And then we've also got some pre-recorded clips from Phil, who is the operating director at Typhon, which are the distraction devices. So what we're looking to do today is to tie all these together, get an idea of what systems, what new solutions are being used in the defence, security and public safety world. These are some examples of the most cutting edge bits of technology in the industry at the moment. So we're going to give each of the guys a chance to run through what they do, who they are, how what they're doing is revolutionizing the industry. And then we're going to tie it together, ask a bunch of questions. Not all of us here know a great deal about each other. So some of us are going to have questions for each other. We're going to have questions from you guys. And we want to give a nice wide overview of what this technology is and why it's so important. So without further ado, I think if we hand over to Soren first. Soren, thanks for joining us. And if you want to run us through who you are, what Lorenz Technology is, give us the rundown.
Thank you very much, Sam, and a warm welcome also from here in Odense, central of Denmark. I'll go very fast through a brief presentation, approximately 10 slides for 10 minutes, in order to give the best impression of the overall view on our product and services here at Lorenz Technology in Denmark. So let's just switch to the presentation while I talk you through something about the company and the product. I hope that in just a few seconds you'll be able to see the first. Well, Lorenz Technology, based in Odense, here in the center of Denmark, the robotics cluster of Denmark, that has proven now to be among the 6 strongest clusters in the world for robotics technology, including drone tech. Now, Lorenz Technology is quite a new company. It was founded in March 2017, and at the moment right now, we are the fastest growing drone company in Denmark, working with solutions that are targeted towards several different segments all over the world. From the beginning, we've been working very closely together with a couple of large clients in order to make sure that the product we bring to market has relevance. Amongst these, I can mention GPS, the worldwide security provider, but also within logistics like DFDS, shipping company, with approximately 36,000 departures on European terminals every year. We have developed our product alongside with them without any exclusivity deals, but this is just to make sure that the product is relevant. We are basically a software producer, so we produce software and we deliver software as a service that is paid with license. But we come out, and that is what is very relevant for today, of the security segment. This was our first focus. And this is just to give you an impression of how do you work with a product that should end up gaining a stronghold in the market. Now, the first thing was the analysis towards the security industry. It's not too much to say that this is not blue ocean areas. It is highly red ocean and highly competitive area. And this was stated also in recent and latest reports from, amongst others, Frost & Sullivan back in 2019, which has been repeatedly referred to also during the last month. So what do you need to do when you have this kind of high competitive environment? Well, we actually came forward with the solution that you go for higher quality in your core business. That is first of all, the way to put in distance between you and your closest competitors. And what we wanted to offer to these security companies on top was the ability to do added services. So not only quality and core services, but also added services with the drone solution. Now, the product that we brought to market is a combination between a cloud-based software platform called the Lorenz Hive and a small piece of hardware that we have patented. And right now you see it on the slide to the left on top of the drone. It's also with me here in the studio today. It's the Lorenz AI Link, a small supercomputer placed out on board the drone, making us able to communicate with the back-end system, the Lorenz Hive. We can transfer pre-programmed routes to the drone. We can ship back the data from the drone by 4G connectivity with sub-second latency on the feed, on the stream of video from the drone coming in to the operator and to the command central, and also able to provide APIs out for different systems if that is a demand from the client. So this is basically the system, a split in two product with a cloud platform and also with a supercomputer on board the drone. So let's try and go in and have a further look at it. There you can see the AI Link on top of the drone. Now, a supercomputer that is modem and computer at the same time. So you have your connectivity by 4G, and you can do edge computing with this device, meaning that we are developing the product alongside the standard demands according to development of software up against GDPR rules, because we can treat the data on board the drone before they are sent or streamed by 4G back into the cloud solution. Step one was higher quality, and basically the drone here with this system acts as eye in the sky for the security guards out on patrol. It gives them a better overview, and if something happens out there that worries them, they are able to push in the share video function in the Hive, and they can share by simply pushing in the email address of the authorities that might be first responders from police or fire brigades, and they can share everything with them, so they'll see where the drone flies and what the drone sees at exactly this moment with low latency, even though they do not even have the license for the system. So this provides also for safety for the guards on ground. But you can say the system is stable, it's out there in the market, it works, and it's easy to operate. This is one of the features. Now, the second step that we offered was the added services. Now, when you're out there on perimeters doing security, why not also take on added services in the field of facility management? And up to the left, you see a building that was actually caught under a security round where the guard noticed 15,000 liters of water on top of the roof. He could notice the owner of the building, and they could send in people to drain the roof in order to prevent further damages. And we can do that with thermal and optic cameras right into the Hive with this live feed as well, and full documentation in the archive, so you can go back at any time and have a closer look at the data. The sensors, the cameras are getting better as we speak. In the center of the field building, that was actually photographed from approximately 40 meters distance. And the zoom levels, this is one of the windows on the far end of the building you see here. You're almost able to recognize what kind of screws were used to mount this window. So you have all kinds of possibilities to open up services within facility management. Now let's go just to have some use case from security. I brought in some use case, and I hope this can facilitate questions after these introductions. This is just from the National Railroads in Denmark. Now, a use case where they, on a sealed perimeter, had very large problems with graffiti painters entering the area illegally, and we did a test. Now, they have approximately cost of 4.8 million British pounds a year in order to remove graffiti from these painters on these areas. Moved into the drone just for 1 weekend, put up signs, had 2 to 3 nightly flyovers on the Hive with thermal cameras, and the graffiti painters, they simply stayed out. They stayed away, and as soon as we actually put down the test and said, all right, it's over for now, after a certain amount of time, they returned to the site. But this is also to say that drones within security, of course, they can do the job out there. But what we call the deterrent factor is very important here to take into consideration, because this is also about people not knowing exactly how much can the drone see, what does it see, what will be recorded on video. So this actually made the illegal intruders stay out of the area and proved the business case, because of course a system like this compared to the cost of trying to re-establish these wagons and actually brush off the graffiti, well, there's a huge difference in spendings there. So this just proves the value. Now, from security, we were brought into the port sector to do also security there, but added services. And I will close this introduction just to show what is happening out there right now and to prove that this system is actually out there in real life working. This is from the port of Esbjerg in Denmark, they are basically one of the most tech advanced ports that we have here, and they are technology driven. They really want to be digital, like many other ports all around the world that we see right now, but these guys, they really do it. So when we look at what we did in the beginning, we did 98 flights during 2019, but just have a look at the numbers. We expect to do 1,000 flights on this system alone in the year of 2021. And this is also just to show you that the task, they are simply growing. So we started up with quay inspection, where they used to have 3 men in a boat. Now we do that with drones who fly automatically alongside the pier and feed everything. And we are starting working with AI, so they do not get the video in the near future. They simply get pictures with coordinates on where there is something wrong that needs to be attended to, and this will end up directly at the person in charge of bringing this into order again. So this was basically the very fast introduction from Lorenz Technology. There's a huge future here. We are getting in on offset projects, in contact with international military equipment suppliers as well. We are in close contact with police forces in several different European countries, and we have sold the first solutions also to the defense, not to combat action, but mostly to overviewing areas that can be when they do their tests and rehearsals out there. We are out there, but we can also do security rounds where soldiers are actually living out in the field or on more stationary bases. So there's a huge potential in solutions like this, and the fact that you can do the low latency streaming, that you have everything archived, simply proves an advantage. And
oh, I think we've just lost Soren there. He's just frozen right at the last minute. Managed to get through everything, and we've just hopefully managed to cover everything you wanted to. Soren, if you can hear us, thanks for that. I'm sorry, but we've just got you frozen mid sentence. So I did have a few questions to ask, but we'll loop back around. Hopefully, we'll get you back a little bit later. If anyone's got any questions for Soren on the Lorenz Tech, post them in the question side. We have got a couple that we'll put to him at some stage if we can get him back. If we can't, don't worry, we'll send them on and we'll catch up on them after the webinar. Hopefully we can get back around to them. One thing I was going to ask him, which I think it might be able to answer myself as well, is the drones that it's being used with currently. And I was hoping Soren could fill us in on that. I think mostly it's the Matrice 300, which you can see behind him. But we'll let him answer that in more detail, hopefully when we get him back on. And then obviously the future developments those guys are looking at, but we'll loop back around. So before we move on to the questions on that, Dave from Planck, if we get you to run us through the Planck system in a similar sort of format, give us 10 minutes of what the system is. I appreciate, especially with something like Planck, you could probably talk about it for 10 hours. But give us the overview, and then we'll hammer you with some questions after. I'm sure Matt's probably got a few as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. And sorry we lost Soren. Hopefully you can rejoin. I got some questions for him as well. But yeah, I won't even take full 10 minutes. I'll give you a quick update on who Planck Aero Systems is. I'll show a short video here in a minute. And but I love the questions. I love kind of that interaction, and so we'll get to that as quickly as possible. But it looks like Soren's back.
Yeah, we've got it. Just pop back on. Soren, we've got some questions for you, but Dave, we'll let you go. We won't interrupt. You can carry on,
okay,
and then we'll loop back around.
Yeah, so Planck Aero Systems, we're based on the west coast of the U.S., and we really focus on embedded software for what we call best-in-class drones. So that kind of is any aircraft, and our specialty is operating from moving platforms, moving vehicles and vessels on land or at sea. So it's any aircraft, any vehicle, in really very dynamic environments. And we provide that as an autonomy engine that is embedded onto the drones themselves. And I'm going to show a quick video here. Let me just pull it up. I hope everybody can see that. What we're going to see here is work that we've done with the U.S. Border Patrol using a Parrot Anafi USA drone. You're going to see a whole landing pad system and securing system involved. That's not required. That's specific for their vehicles, but it is definitely something that Planck works with. The Border Patrol's huge challenge here is that they have a lot of people out in the field. They're in very remote locations, and they have to cover a lot of ground. They have to cover a lot of hard to reach and hard to patrol locations. So think canyons, over hillsides, very brushy areas, and having an element, an asset in the air to help them while they're on patrol is a really huge advantage here. So I'll start this video. You can see this is a U.S. Border Patrol vehicle on patrol. The embedded autonomy on this Anafi USA provides a number of features. The first is just push button launch on the move. So push a button, aircraft takes off. The next is a terrain relative navigation using a customer provided terrain model. The third is what we call a wingman mode, and that's where the aircraft can transit relative to a moving vehicle, hold a fixed location relative to a moving vehicle, which allows the operator to really focus on the payload and not the flying. The payload on this aircraft is excellent. It's great for object detection and tracking. User maintains mobility the entire time. All of the navigation is vehicle centric. So at the end of a flight, it's push button. Aircraft comes back, finds its landing target and lands on its own. And the operator doesn't have to worry about becoming a pro pilot. He can focus on his job that he's trained to do, which is patrol. He's in a vehicle. He maintains mobility that whole time. And really, we think about that as allowing users to go further and do more using best-in-class drones. We love the Anafi USA. It's a nice, small, compact drone. Really a good fit for ground vehicles. We do similar types of things on vessels for drones of all classes, from large fixed-wing vertical takeoff and landing systems, helicopter systems, heavy lift, multi-rotors, and kind of everything in between. So I promised I'd keep it short, but I would love questions from panelists and the attendees here as well.
Yeah, Dave, well done, mate. Mark, see Matt smiling because now he knows he's got an extra 2 or 3 minutes. He can waffle on. You've done him a big favour there. Dave, one thing I was going to ask is, at the minute, obviously you've got the Anafi USA there. Is there any other drones it works with currently, or is that future developments that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, the Anafi USA is actually somewhat of a special application. Oftentimes we deploy this autonomy engine as a module that gets integrated into a aircraft. In those situations, we typically work directly with the aircraft manufacturer, right? This is part of the control system itself. It's not a payload that gets added on. It's part of the control system. So we've worked with a wide number of different aircraft manufacturers. So it is available in many forms. We really like that Anafi USA platform. It was developed in the US. Here in the US, that's a really big deal these days. And it's part of the US Blue UAS program. So it's certified, has a really high performance payload, and it has an embedded computer already available. So we run right on board that existing embedded computer. There's no added hardware. So it's just a nice complete package. But we do work with, lots of different aircraft from different manufacturers. And
so it's more that you guys have selected what you see as the best drone in that sector, in that world, or you've selected the ones you want to develop with that are sort of top of the class.
Yeah, that's right. We like to find the best drone in each class for the specific job. We understand that there's no one-size-fits-all drone, right? If you're carrying cargo from ship to ship, that's a very different drone need than doing ISR from a small vehicle on the move. So we work with the kind of the best in class in each of those kind of groupings.
Cool. Matt, Soren, you guys got any questions for Dave at all?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a system that we've been looking at for some time. And I mean, we as in the UK defence sector, and obviously, Dave, you and I had a little chat beforehand about some of the very interesting elements that are certainly engaging here. One very, very quick technical question on opportunities for power and for charging of drones. Is that currently part of the system? If so, great. If not, is this something that you're looking at for the future?
Yeah, it's something that we've approached in different ways over time. As you know, drone batteries are a really big deal. If you've ever dealt with drone fleets, right, you have to maintain charge, health of the battery. With that border patrol system I just showed, there is actually integrated recharging into that landing pad system. Again, that's a specific system for that customer that mounts right in the back of their truck. But it does automatically mate with the Anafi USA charging and allows that aircraft to recharge. Now, that is something that is nice. It keeps you kind of topped off trickle charge all the time when you're on your regular drive patrol. So the aircraft's always ready to fly. When you come back and land, it takes a while to recharge. So if you want to get back in the air quickly, you're going to have to do a battery swap. But if you aren't getting back in the air quickly, or not right away, you got some time, you can recharge without ever getting out of your vehicle, and then have another full flight thereafter.
Great. No, brilliant. That's ideal. I think looking at the way that we're seeing defense evolve into a more dynamic, fast-moving area, and you mentioned that the particular example there covered large territory, and I think that's something where we're going from a very, very small area of operations traditionally, which was limited by the effect of our sensors and our weapon systems, to having to dominate a much larger piece of turf. So I think what you've produced is really, really exciting and very, very interesting indeed.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Matt. And we're working with Sam and the Coptrz team to take this and especially with the Anafi USA platform and this added capability and deliver it to UK customers. So that's something that we're just kicking off now and we're really excited about.
Yeah, us too.
Dave, there's one more question, Dave, that's coming from one of the guys in the chat here. It's asking, when you mentioned that the system is certified, what kind of certification is that? What sort of level certification?
Yeah, so I was speaking specifically about the U.S. Cybersecurity has been a big deal with U.S. Government agencies. For those of the people on the line that aren't aware, using foreign-made, especially Chinese-made drones is an issue for U.S. government customers. So they sponsored a program through DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit, and the result of that was a class of small drones that were kind of pre-authorized for use by U.S. government agencies. The Anafi USA is one of those. So that's what I mean by certified. Of course, there are FCC certified radios involved, things like that. But I was specifically referring to the pre-authorization for use by government agencies.
Yeah, and that's it's also an issue for, when you said it was an issue for US Armed Forces, also for the UK MOD. Not so keen on using Chinese kit if they can avoid it in most cases. So I think that's something that's kind of shared pretty widely sort of in the Western world. Soren, glad we've got you back. I had a couple of questions that came in just before we lost you. The first one was what kind of drone systems do, obviously you've got a Matrice 300 there in the background, but what kind of drone systems does the Lorenz Technology system work with? Is it just one drone? Have you developed it to work with loads? Is it completely agnostic?
Yeah, you could say that the advantage with the system here is that it is drone agnostic. Still, the market kind of dictates also our focus right now, because in order to be in business and in order to do your growth, you need to pay attention to the guys who own most of the market right now. And we cannot argue that DJI is present out there in the majority of the cases. So we have integrated to the earlier M210 and to the M300 standing next to me, because they're flying all over. And they are also flying within police and military authorities right now. Of course, there's a lot of focus on what would be the next really big commercial drone that could compete on a price value scale here. And we are, of course, also looking very much and very interested into this, because we will be able to move the AI link from one drone to another as long as it's able to carry it. And then we can integrate to these drones. And that is basically our strategy, that we are drone agnostic, but we right now, of course, move with the place where the market is. We have integrated earlier to 2 other drones, a Finnish drone and a Dutch drone. But we have actually not for commercial use out there in security on ports seen anything at the moment who can compete with these drones, because we have to provide for 365 days flights. And in Denmark, I'm sorry to say, our weather is even worse than in Manchester. We have approximately 200 days a year with rain and wind. And we go up with these drones on the port in 12 to 15 meters a second of wind and in heavy rains, because we need to go. And so that is the deal right now.
Yeah. So the only limiting factor then really is the weight the drone can carry. If the drone can carry that little payload, the little AI computer, then it can be integrated, basically.
Correct.
Cool. Dave, you mentioned when we lost Soren that you had a question for him. I don't know if you've still got that down. You can fire that towards him now.
Yeah, Soren, I'm interested more in that embedded computer that Sam just mentioned, and kind of the form factor and the adaptability to deploy additional capabilities on that, whether that be real-time payload processing. Is that something that has any third-party API, or is that something that you can customize for specific customer needs?
So we have customized onboard edge computing and the use of AI, and we did a kind of state-of-the-art solution for the maritime business, DFDS, and actually it was portrayed on DJI.com approximately 1.5 years ago, I think. And this is all about detection and then taking action according to what the drone sees. In this case, recognizing trailers on large terminals, plucking out one frame from the video, attaching GPS coordinates to it, attaching timestamp, and forwarding the picture to the backend solution where the number on the picture of the trailer was read, and forwarded to the TOC masters. Because the business case was, if we could save them 15 minutes of loading time, they estimated approximately 1 ton of fuel oil savings on each of their 36,000 yearly departures. And so this was and that was actually an example of edge computing and AI being integrated on board the drone.
And it's a really good question to ask, because this is what has been outlined as the future of drone technology. As a macro idea is AI, swarming, those kind of things. And that is the way the industry's going very much. It's taking the responsibility and sort of the task off the pilot as much as possible. And both the Planck system and the Lorenz system fit that category really well. So before we get onto Matt, I'm just going to try in true BBC News style to throw up an interview we did earlier. So this is with Phil. Phil Wright from a company called Typhon. Now they make a distraction device that fits onto internal tactical drones. and we supply this into police and into the military. And effectively, it is a very loud bang that can disorientate and distract people when it's set off inside a building. So we'll see if we can throw this up, and hopefully you will be able to hear this interview.
Great, thanks, Sam. So I'm Phil Wright. I'm the operations director for Typhon Ltd. We are a startup company based down just outside of Salisbury, near Porton. And we've been in the drone market for the last probably 2.5 years. But prior to that, we started off developing a range of non-lethal distraction devices for military, government and law enforcement use. They were handheld, they were lay down, RF initiated. And how we got from sort of that side of things to where we are now with distraction on drone payloads was it was a specific end user requirement from a European police counter-terror team. They wanted the ability to fit distraction onto the original Loki 1 platform. And for those of you that are familiar with the Loki 1 drone, it was never specifically designed to carry a payload. So the first major challenge we had to overcome was how do you get an RF initiated distraction device onto a drone that could take a maximum payload or a maximum weight of 100 grams. So the original DS100 system from Typhon came in at about 96 grams with the live cartridge, and that pushes out 5 individual pyrotechnic events. So each one is around 169 decibels per bang. Because the fuses on those are electronic, it can be the timing between each event can be set and can be programmed. So you could have it as a 5-round burst, similar to automatic fire, or you could have it as a single shot or another pattern of the end user's requirement.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think some of the questions the guys here will think of kind of listening to that. There's a few words and terms which, if you're not maybe from that world, might kind of go over your head a bit. But the Loki drone, so that's the Sky Hero drone system, Belgian company, and it's an internal tactical drone, isn't it? So it's built for internal use. Your device clips on, and then it can be deployed inside a building to then distract and sort of disorientate people. That's pretty much it, isn't it?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And we've seen. I mean, that's where we started with that Sky Hero indoor drone. We're now on to the second iteration of that, and I'm sure we'll come on to that in a little bit. What we've also seen, and the beauty of our original system, is we found that it can be mounted to any UAS platform, any drone platform. So we've mounted it onto the Parrot Anafi, the Anafi Thermal, the Thermal SE, and we're working on a more integrated solution currently for the Anafi USA. Again, specifically sort of more military and law enforcement orientated, but that that's in the development plan and is quite a way down the path of development.
Yeah, and I think it being drone agnostic for me anyway, and for my customers, that's a big tick. They don't have to they don't have to get the system for one specific drone. They know it can be used in future iterations. The technology moves so quick. They're not just buying a system that's going to work in one instance. It's going to develop as drones develop, which is always important. And you touched on in your introduction there that it was developed for a specific requirement by European. Was it European Counter-Terror Agency?
Yes, yeah. So it was effectively two agencies, one in Belgium, one in Holland. Very similar requirement. It was for use by their breaching teams. So effectively, for those of you, and again, just to give you a bit of background, and I suppose to set the scene, flashbangs, flashbang grenades are routinely used when a team, whether it's military or police, is storming a building. Those devices typically contain anywhere between 5 and 10 grams of explosive, and obviously a lot more of those type of devices are thrown in training than operationally. But if you Google flashbang injuries or flashbang compensation claims, you will see that, particularly in America, but also across Europe, I think in Holland, a number of operators have been injured in training or operationally, but also a number of targets and bystanders have also been injured by conventional devices. And this was another reason why Typhon was developed, because we can give the same sound effect, but without the fragmentation, without the heat, and without the with a much lower risk to the people on the receiving end of the actual device.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of answered my next question was going to be what this kind of replaces. So what the traditional methods were. When we talk about drones, we in certain worlds will say, well, using a drone will replace using a man up a ladder, for example. Really easy use case there of it's much safer to send a drone up to check something high than it is a person. Not to mention normally cheaper, more time efficient as well. And this kind of falls in that same category from what I've seen. You've got a traditional method which has worked for many, many years. That's not to say it's not had its problems, but there's been no alternative, basically. And I think that's where, from what I've seen, that's where Typhon fits in. The benefits you've said there is obviously it's safer by a huge measure because it's not kicking out fragmentation and heat. But also, I'd say that the use cases are wider because you don't need a person there to pull something and throw something into a room. You can remotely trigger at the exact moment you want it to, and you can trigger it in different ways as well, Connie. It doesn't have to be just one big bang. It can be different distractions at different times and all that kind of stuff as well.
And you're absolutely right, Sam. I mean, it's and what we're not certainly we're certainly not saying that this is the be all and the end all and is a replacement for conventional devices. It's very much an adjunct too. Over the last few years, the use of drones in public safety and those sorts of arenas has become year on year higher and higher. And I guess the drone platform, as Sam says, as a method of putting a camera and putting a visual platform into a different sort of space to give additional capability to the guys on the ground. This, by adding Typhon to that, you're bringing additional capability to that platform. So it's not just a flying camera or a flying sensor. You now have the ability to cause an interaction with something or somebody, should you so desire. So it's sort of adding and expanding that capability, and we have additional payloads in development that will continue to add to that.
Yeah, and we'll get onto those definitely, because it's always worth looking at those. The future developments are what's often most interesting to people, is what's coming next. But I think it might be a good time, if we can, just to show a clip of the system working. I think we've got a clip of it on the Loki 2. So what I'll just do here, and obviously we're at ideally in normal times we'd have done this in person, but with the way things are at the minute, we are reduced to doing it this way. So hopefully you guys now can see the video I'm about to play with the Loki 2, and hopefully there's sound on it as well. Phil, what did we see there? What was that, and what was the triggering system as well?
So what you saw there, the new Loki 2 platform from Sky Hero, with the Typhon payload cradle fitted below it. So if I just show you this as an example, so what I have here is the new Loki 2 drone, and what you'll see underneath is a blue anodized cartridge. This is what would typically normally hold the pyrotechnic charge. This one's just an LED version, and this is mounted in a cradle which mounts over the Loki 2 drone itself. What you have below here, so for those of you that are familiar with this platform, there is a payload connector on the bottom of here, and our system takes power from the drone that way. So you power it on, it'll sit there dormant until you're ready to use it. This one's slightly different, and this is the first fully integrated system. So what we've done with the control software is this is actually integrated into the drone GCS, the ground control unit. And if you can see, hopefully on screen, so this is the operator's panel for the Loki 2, and at the top of the screen here you can just hopefully see a grey bar, and that will say Typhon. So basically all of the control for our system is done through this unit. It's all encrypted. We're using the same frequencies that Sky Hero use, and basically you will use the left and the right buttons on here to arm the system and then to fire the system. The latest iteration of the software, that's selectable. So what you saw in that video was the first two events were controlled by holding down the arm button and just tapping for each bang the fire button, and then the remaining button you hold it down, or the remaining event, sorry, you hold it down, and that gives you the remaining burst for what's left in the cartridge. So at the moment we're limited on size and weight to 5 events. But for larger drone payloads, you could have multiple cartridges, you could have larger cartridges, you could have potentially deployable, droppable cartridges. So again, it just depends on what the system is.
And I think as well with that video, if the audio did come through, then you'll have heard the sort of pop. But it doesn't really do it justice, because it is a very, I mean, what decibels is it?
It's 169 decibels per bang. So you've got 5 times 169. It
is deafeningly loud. It is very, very. I don't think I've been in a building with one when it's been triggered, but even outside from 20, 25, 30 meters, it is very, very loud. And in terms of a distraction, I mean, you can say as well, Phil, that there's been times when you don't necessarily want to trigger it in a built-up area, because the police will come round to the building if they're not aware to find out what's happened, because it sounds like there is something happening that they wouldn't want to happen. So you do have to be careful where you demo it. But yeah, I don't think the videos for this can really do it justice in terms of how effective it can be.
Yeah. And I think certainly the feedback we've had from the end users has been very positive on that. As well as distraction, it can be used for attraction. So there are numerous different ways, and it can also be used to, if you're actually flying the drone, particularly with the Sky Hero systems where they're typically flown indoors. If you want to prevent a target from trying to interfere with the drone, trying to take the drone and grab it out of the sky, then you've got something mounted on there that you can literally just hit, and that's going to cause them to back away.
It's definitely going to make you think twice if you're thinking about grabbing it and throwing it against the wall or something. I think back away is probably the politest way of saying run away as quick as you can, because you don't know what's just happened.
Yes.
But yeah, so multiple uses, and I think what you mentioned, looping back a bit there, it all being integrated into the controller is really important as well. The feedback we've always had from police and military is that the last thing they want is an extra controller or any sort of extra device they've got to clip on or fit into a belt or whatever it may be. So yeah, that for me, was that a conscious decision for this iteration, or has that always been the idea from the start?
It's always been there in the background, Sam. It was a conscious decision for this iteration on Loki 2, and that was based on operator feedback. On the original system, the request was to have a different or separate man in the loop. So we had a separate RF hand controller for the initiation circuit, and that's possible. There are certain circumstances and certain end user groups that for their own specific reasons, they want a separate hand controller. And that's possible. We do that. But for those end user groups where they want it all integrated, they want the pilot to be in full control of everything and the payload, then again, you've just seen that demonstrated.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's important as well with a lot of the companies we as Coptrz work with are very flexible to developments. I mean, yourselves and then the drone manufacturers we've mentioned, like Sky Hero and Parrot, will all take on board user feedback, and then the next iteration will be slightly different. It'll be improved in different ways, but that's not to say that if there's something you want, i.e. an extra man in the loop, that's worked better on previous iterations, that's not going to be made available in future. So it's all very, from what I've seen anyway, from Typhon side, all very feedback driven, all the developments that we're seeing.
Yes. Yeah. And ultimately, one of the main reasons or the main drivers behind that is we want to give whoever the team is or the guys are that are using it on the ground, we want to give them the maximum flexibility and the maximum capability. So if they say, we need it like this, we need the delay to be so many milliseconds rather than the standard, then all of that is achievable. All of that is doable.
Brilliant. So I just wanted to touch on as well, sort of we've gone through what it is, what it's used for, why it's been developed in the way it has. I think the only other thing to really cover is who's currently using it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the thing with technology like this is it is somewhat sensitive in some areas. But if there is any interesting use cases that you can share, any customers who are using it in active ways that we might be able to talk about, even just loosely, I think for the guys that are listening, considering it, that could be really helpful. So if there is anything you can discuss around that'd be great.
Yeah. So I can't share specifics, but I think we've already mentioned there are a number of law enforcement and military breaching teams that are either using this and evaluating the system on the Sky Hero platform. There are a number of people who are using the previous iteration on other drones. So some of the DJI platforms, they're using it as a complete bolt-on sort of standalone system. We're talking to one of the largest potential markets is going to be law enforcement in the US. So we're talking to through our manufacturing partner in the States. We're talking to a number of end user groups over there, a number of the US agencies, both law enforcement and military, who are have seen the additional capability that it brings, and are either purchasing or evaluating the unit at the moment.
Yeah, and then from the UK side for what we've done with the system, as obviously Phil's well aware, we've done some testing with the MOD. There's certain areas of the MOD which are already using the system, and there are certain areas of police that are, I guess we could say, exploring avenues as to how they get it. But the need is there and the want to have the system is there. But with police and public safety, it's never that simple. So
we have, interestingly, a number of EU police agencies who have active POs in with us at the moment. I probably can't share too much detail about who they are, but one of them's a pretty close European neighbour, and then there's a couple of others that sort of, again, key police forces in the European arena.
Yeah, and I think we've answered what I was going to move on to there. Pretty much in that is who are the future target customers? Who are we as Coptrz, as the UK distributor, and you guys as the manufacturer? Who are we targeting moving forward? And I think I guess it would be every police force that has any sort of CT or firearms presence. Yes, certainly as a top priority. Yep. There may well be other uses within other areas of police and law enforcement as well.
Well, I mean, we're also, we've also done or considering bits and pieces. We've developed so we have another Typhon product, which is a handheld or an RF initiated glass breaker that we have sort of miniaturized, and again, we're able to fly that as a payload on a drone. So again, that was developed for a specific end user for the original Sky Hero Loki 1 platform. And we are in the development pipeline. We have a plan to bring that to the Loki 2 as well. So that will be happening at some point, probably within the next three or 4 months, if not sooner.
Yeah, and that's going to open up. So when we're saying that lots of UK police forces are basically want to push forwards with the system, some of the elements of the distraction system mean they can't just go out and buy one. At least at the moment, we're working through that process, but future developments like that, so when you've said there the window tapper or the window smasher, and then other sort of distraction based devices that maybe aren't as pyrotechnic, shall we say, they could potentially fall into that category and allow law enforcement in the UK to open up a bit more to these kind of payloads. So on that, what are the other future developments then? So we've got the window tapper, which is looking at coming out, which obviously is a really interesting bit of kit, and I imagine there's a lot of people listening who are already thinking of uses for something like that within their day-to-day work if they're working in law enforcement.
Yeah.
But there is some other developments coming as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so we have, I mean, maybe not so much for the UK domestic market, but you know, for other markets, particularly US, we have potential to put like a not a pepper spray, but a pepper OC cartridge onto the drone, and to use the drone as a delivery mechanism for riot control. We have the ability, and we're working again in partnership to basically bring a CS cartridge again for similar environments, or for that sort of breaching team. If you put the drone into a room and you've got a target in that room that you need to neutralize, you have the ability to do that with a CS cartridge. Other examples of what we're doing are larger payloads for medium to larger size drones, which are actually droppable. We're working with another partner who is an energetics explosives manufacturer. And so we're bringing the RF initiation side, the payload design and release mechanisms, the RF initiation side of it, and they're obviously bringing the explosives expertise to be able to have a deployable, droppable payload for things like counter IED, or for minefield clearance, identifying a landmine and then being able to fly a drone, drop a payload, and neutralize that.
Yeah, and really interesting developments that I think potentially members of the general public might hear and think only of negative connotations and stuff like that. But as you've said there, it's not always, because these developments are based in the military world or in the defence world. It's not always that they're being used in anger. Often it is used in things like that, like IED detection. Clearing mines. A lot of the stuff we've done with the Loki 2 and some other payloads has been for clearing buildings that are partially collapsed. Whereas normally you'd send in either a dog or even people to go through the building and clear it. The risk being it could collapse at any moment. Obviously, you'd much rather lose a drone than you would lose a person or even a dog. So, the use cases are expanding as the offering expands. I think the window tapper is a fantastic idea, and I know it's one that will overcome that objection of, well, how do we get the drone into the building to use the distraction device in the first place?
Yeah. I think on that as well, Sam. I mean, the initial feedback on the concept and the initial system that we developed, that we've had from end users, is that quite often the risk assessment that a lot of potentially members of the audience to this webinar have to go through just to put a guy up a ladder with a hoolie bar to try and break glass, even if that's to get somebody out of the building, in a rescue scenario. Potentially you might have another guy on that ladder behind the guy who's swinging the bar, who's holding his legs. I think again, if you Google, there's a number of videos of where people have done that online, and potentially with the systems we're developing, we're trying to remove that and reduce that risk to the guys that have to go out there and do these things.
Yeah, exactly. So all the future developments, they are all aimed at this public safety and defence market, aren't they? There's nothing really moving into any other wider markets at the moment.
No, and our sort of customer base is very much law enforcement, military, government. We don't sell to commercial organisations. We don't sell to commercial security organisations. That we don't feel it would be appropriate necessarily for these devices to be used in that way. So we're very, very focused on our market and our end customer base.
Yeah, exactly, and that leads me to, if people do want more information, obviously they can contact Phil directly, speak to me as well in terms of the packages that we do, how the equipment is provided. It's obviously there's kind of cartridge extension boxes, and there's the brackets and all that kind of stuff, and then we package it in with the drones, training on how to use it safely, all that kind of stuff. But if you're joeblogs@gmail.com, running a drone business, unfortunately, we probably won't be able to provide you with much by way of information. But yeah, if you are from a law enforcement organisation, if you're from the defence world, then absolutely get in touch. Let us know. I'm sure Phil will be happy to answer any technical questions you might have. And then when you move on to the commercial side, link in nicely with us at Coptrz and see how we can answer your questions.
And I think, you know, for those in the audience that already know of us, then they probably already know of the links between obviously Typhon and Coptrz, but obviously Coptrz, Typhon, and Brigantes, and Parrot, you know, for some of the range of products that they bring along as well, which the Typhon payloads are in development for.
Yeah, exactly. So there's more to this than just here is your distraction device. Mr. Policeman or Mr. Army Man, off you go. There's a wide range of support from the point of we're looking at drones in any application to the point when you're developing a full drone capability, and that's where we as Coptrz, working with partners in certain areas such as Brigantes, work with the manufacturers, you, Parrot, Sky Hero, others, to pull these packages together and get people working at top speed as quickly as we can, basically, and then saving that money, saving time, and being safer and more efficient as well. But Phil, I mean, that's everything that I had to ask you noted down today. So I don't know if you've got anything else you want to say, anything else you want to add.
I think the only bit to add is that the distraction systems, the other bits and pieces is all currently available. So if the discussion that you've listened to and watched today has sort of piqued your interest, then as I say, get in touch with me, Sam, or your Brigantes contact, and we'd be more than happy to pass on more information and have a discussion.
Without further ado, then, Matt, I can see you're itching to get going. So if you want to run us through you guys and Brigantes, what you do, and then we'll just go for a free-for-all with questions firing out to everyone.
Great, thanks, Sam. So hello, everybody. We are, well, let's go back a little bit. I've established Brigantes in 2014 off a background within brand building within the outdoor industry. In fact, I say a background, I was literally born into it. I was then, as my father would say, on loan to the Marines for a number of years, and afterwards came back into the family business. But very quickly, we were getting requests from our old cronies to help out and solve problems at a very technical level, whether that's within a mountaineering environment, clothing, all those kind of elements, and that built up over a period of time a communication channel between us, the end users, the authority, as in the defence equipment and support agencies, NATO, and so on and so forth. And we now help with a whole heap of capabilities. Drones sort of came on the scene for us about 3 years ago, and specifically on-demand drones, because that's what we hold sort of the expertise within. We're not big heavy armor specialists. Unfortunately, I had to walk everywhere with everything on my back. So sore knees and sore back are my raison d'etre. But that's what we focus on. It's all about making that individual more competent, more capable, more useful within an operational environment and to their commanders, and be able to deliver stuff. Now, drones, from a military's point of view, and certainly from our point of view, are an exceptionally useful tool in order to be able to deliver that effect and increase, get the multipliers on just a basic infantryman or a marine or whoever. Now, traditionally, the military, I think it's fair to say, are somewhat behind the power curve when it comes to things like this developing, because fundamentally the tech is growing so fast within the commercial space that it's actually very, very difficult for the military to be able to keep pace. I think there's also very fair to say that the way that they perceive technology like this can be a little bit simplistic. For example, guys using simple drones and as we highlighted before, things with a Far Eastern origin tend to not be as popular for a whole raft of different reasons. So they're using a Parrot an AFI thermal SE, I think it was, they were using at the time. And very much they would use it as an extension of their eyeball. They were seeing this very, very much real time. You know, how do we see into places that we can't see otherwise? They were missing out on a huge plethora of opportunity, which, you know, both Dave and Soren have pointed out here, that by whether it's software or the addition of certain data devices and computing devices can deliver mapping, 3D modeling. They can deliver, as Sam just said, payload effects, and payloads at some really, really very, very light but very effective levels. So we spend a lot of time educating the end user on what's the art of the possible. And actually we did a webinar, and some of you may have seen it, and if you had, great. If not, no dramas. It is available to see as well, and it was one we did alongside Coptrz. And just so you're clear, you know, we work very, very much hand in hand with Coptrz, dealing with the military customer base. And anyway, we did a webinar covering on-the-man drones, and what I've done is I've taken a screenshot from that, which is all talking about how we perceive drone usage within defense. So let's see if my simplistic military brain can make this work. Okay, share screen. Magic, 2 seconds. Okay, so hopefully you can all see what we call a drone trifecta. I'll just pop that back up. What we realise.
Try that again, Matt. We've just got the nothing's, unless it's just me. Nothing's popped.
Has it popped up now? If not, no dramas. We can move on, and I can do it through the medium of dance, I'm sure.
At least it wasn't just me. Makes me feel a little.
No, it's all right. You know, there are Luddites in all of us, per se. So basically, what we saw was 3 component parts, which were critical to making the drone capability and drone space work. So first of all was the end user, and it wasn't just one end user. It's not just Bob here in flowery clothing crawling around in the mud. There were infanteers and people in that point of view, but then you had special forces whose needs were very, very different. You had special operations, which were trying to do things at extended ranges, expeditionary forces. You had engineers who were trying to do recce's on bridges, on different locations. They had to do mapping in areas which, well, may have changed quite significantly within a very short space of time. And I think anybody who comes from Aleppo would probably attest to that. You know, if you take a good old Ordnance Survey map of Syria, it probably looks significantly different now to what it would have done when they drew the map. So all those kind of areas where you've got end users who have an area where these tools can be really effective. Equally, when we looked at their tasks they were doing, there was a huge number of different tasks that were common throughout a military base, yet they were only really engaging with one, which was recce, which was kind of that Mark 1 eyeball being projected further into the space. So one of the biggest areas that we looked at was the support to command and control. How does the use of drones enable a commander to support his guys on the ground by giving him real-time data? So being able to see that a casualty has occurred before it's been reported to them over a radio. That saves time, which, you know, not being too crude about it, saves lives and really does help keep people in the golden hour. Equally, they can see threats coming up, so they can bring support to that unit. So all these different things that we looked at. What we also realized within the drone space that, again, it's not one size fits all. Quadcopters, small quadcopters like the ANAFI USA, are probably perfect for the vast majority of teeth arms for land forces, for Marine Smith and Private Jones on the ground and needing that immediacy. But you need to layer it within a system that integrates. So, you know, exactly the kind of drones that Soren's been using with the heavier lift drones, offering something greater at a slightly higher level, be that physically or metaphorically speaking. So those are really important from the hardware point of view. But the real opportunity for us, we saw, was relatively drone agnostic, and it was to do with the software. And I think Dave's piece of software is a perfect example of this, where actually there's some great innovation here, which is using a solid platform, an existing platform, hardware platform, and yet being able to complete different tasks much more easily with significantly lower risk to the individual. And whether we like it or not, you know, yes, our military is still trained to close with and have an effect on the enemy. Being a Western nation, we don't tend to do that well with casualties occurring, and if we want to minimize that as much as possible. And actually, in reality, a drone is a very, very cheap way of achieving that effect.
And Matt, I just want to allude back to something you said at the start, and that is about them being on-the-man drone systems. Why is that so important? That it is an on-the-man system, that it is mobile, quick to deploy, easy to use.
Yeah, I think looking at some of there's two ways of looking at it. First of all, there was a phrase coined by the media, and I can't remember which particular newspaper it was, which was the strategic corporal. So you could be a 24-year-old lad from Manchester. We've seen as Manchester was brought up with rubbish weather, apparently, which I can attest to. And that person could have very, very limited world experience outside of that sphere. Yet that one person could have a strategic effect on an operation, be it in Afghanistan, Iraq, or any other part of the world. So giving people at the lowest level the ability to have the effect on their space as best as possible is super important. You know, an F-35 aircraft is great, but they're very, very small numbers, and they are significantly more expensive than a drone. Now, if we then go to that individual, that corporal there on the ground, he's the immediate person. He's the person engaging with the population if you're within a counterinsurgency operation. He's the person getting the face-to-face with the enemy if that is the situation there as well. So providing that person with that ability to move that drone and have that capability is a huge combat multiplier. If we make that drone too big, then there's only a limited amount of things. He's not just carrying a drone. He's got to carry a weapon. He's got to carry all his ammunition. He's got to carry communications. He's got to carry water. He's got to carry all kinds of different things. So that drone being really small, or there's a balancing point. Too small, you can't do much with it. But, you know, and I'll pick the NAF USA as a perfect example here. You've got a really good supportable item there that can deliver good effect without overburdening the soldier, and that is very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously now we know it fits with the Planck system as well. Less than half a kilo, I think the NAF USA is. So it is
bang on 500 grams, I believe. And I think the what that adds to the commander who's in charge of that corporal. First of all, he can see what that corporal can see. He can then preempt everything, and it makes it, you know, two people can have a vastly greater dramatic effect than what we used to be able to do with, say, 100.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I know there's a couple of questions for Soren, for the Lorenz guys that have come in. Just before we get on to them, Dave, Soren, you guys got any questions for Matt at all? Anything you want to ask him?
Yeah, actually I do. Yeah, Matt, the work you're doing is great. It's super valuable. You know, that kind of leading edge information, like you said, it saves lives. I'm curious how your users or customers are leveraging or interested in leveraging AI on the drones or things like augmented reality that we're starting to see emerge here from different groups.
So there's a couple of things there. So, and I think it was brought up with the AI beforehand, which was reducing the burden on the operator. I think when you are in a situation where you're trying to track a number of different threat opportunities, one to the drone and you're trying to conduct a task, then AI from that point of view, which is removing the need to fly the drone, to directly pilot the drone, and therefore you're observing the effect that the drone can have, the data that's coming out, the products that are coming back is very, very important. So on that side of it, really good. Sorry, Dave, I lost. What was the second half of that one?
Well, you know, other things like augmented reality or you know, those types of things.
I apologize. So there's also a real big push now within the training space to use synthetic environments to merge synthetic, both the real and the artificial. So for example, you could have a shoot house. So a team, and this could be a police team as well as a military team, there's no difference here. Yet you could have in a completely different location, you could have a drone pilot who is therefore rehearsing that mission, going through it, and building a picture of what they will see within that space. So augmented reality is being used dramatically within that. Equally, if I'm an engineer officer and I'm sat within a headquarters and my guys have managed to be able to do a nice lovely 360 on a bridge that I need to understand, I can use that augmented reality to understand the weak points on that bridge if I need to remove that bridge from a tactical point of view. Equally, I can go and recce sites for potential locations without me having to put anybody on the ground. And you know, traditionally we would go and do a map recce. So essentially you're sat with a piece of paper and go, we think that looks great. The next step is to put somebody specifically on that piece of turf. And that comes with certain logistical problems and inherent risks. If you're putting a device in there which can take the images and then you bring it back, you stitch it together in the nice warmth of your headquarters tent with a Coptrz mug, obviously, then actually it allows you to support that decision making, make better decisions.
I think linking back there to the AI side, that reducing the burden on the pilot, that, I mean, Soren, feel free to jump in here, but that's exactly what Lorenz, if you wanted to sum it up in a sentence as to what it does, it reduces the need for manpower and it reduces the burden on the drone teams on the ground, doesn't it? That's exactly the use case.
Well, yeah, sorry, as we see it from here also, of course, it reduces the demands on the pilot, but basically what we aim to do is we aim to provide the users or the clients with the most relevant data. So that is actually the whole issue and the whole point. So getting the data, getting the AI in, and getting the most relevant data out into the end users. So that is basically the functionality of the AI.
Yeah, and then sharing that data. Sorry, Matt. And then sharing that data from there to the relevant people, I guess. Because one thing, when I saw when we did our trials with the Lorenz system, was how easy it was. I was astonished at how easy it was to just copy a link and send it by email anywhere in the world. So if there's an incident that someone back in whatever country needs to see, if, for example, there's an incident you want to share with the police immediately, if you're UK based, you can send that via email. They can immediately click and see what your drone can see. And from what I've seen for the past 5 years, there's never been anything, certainly within that cost, you know, that's not a crazy amount of money, that's done that anywhere near as easily. I don't think you mentioned that in your intro bit, so it might be worth maybe if you could give us a bit more on how that works and why that's such an important feature.
Well, what you mentioned here is the share link function. So basically, it's all about providing the real-time streaming, and with such a low latency, and this is below half a second. First of all, because some amongst authorities, they need the instant view, they need it with low latency, but you also need that in a system-wise base, because if you want to do remote control based on a system, you need the low latency. Otherwise, you'll end up in the bushes within no time. So what we do here is that we have the standard feed for the guys who have the license and who are users of the system. They'll get the low latency feed right into the operator and to the command central. And if something goes on out there that kind of makes them insecure, they need backup, they can push the share link function, put in the email, click how many minutes they would like to share this with the external users. It could be 20 minutes. and then just send it away. So the user in the other end who enters via this link, they'll be able to see exactly where the drone is on location, and they'll get the live feed right on their screen with low latency. And we tested that in order to make sure. So we flew the drone here in Denmark, Odense. We tested it from Command Central in Dubai. We tested it from Essen in Germany, from London in the UK, and we maintained the low latency below half a second on the stream when we did so. And I think what you're mentioning here is actually the core of it. You need to make things easy, especially now where this new technology enters different segments in the market. So we have these solutions where you go for the low-hanging fruits, you deliver exactly what they need. You deliver it with drones who can be, so you can have a spare drone in within a few hours because they cannot wait for a drone to come in 3 days or 4 months. And besides that, next to it, you do your heavy development projects, you do your offset projects with a longer range where you really develop and push your technology, but you need to be in market and be out there in real life on a daily basis in order to know what the customers want and how this technology can be implemented.
Yeah, agreed. That's a brilliant answer. And I guess when you're talking there about the future, the developments after the initial step in, that's where you move into the more complex AI side, isn't it? That's kind of where that goes. Yeah, exactly. Matt, I think you had a question there before I started rambling on.
No, we've got a question here from Chris. Chris Fry, thanks for the question, Chris. So he says, what options may the operator of a drone in a recce role have regarding stealth concealment? I'm assuming there's a size issue, isn't there always? Smaller the better, and also minimizing emissions, RF and audio visual signature. So I was going to type this one, but I thought this is very relevant to what we're talking here, and just what Soren's been talking about there, about that getting that granularity with the end user and helping them understand precisely what they want to do is very relevant. So to answer your question, Chris, specifically, depending upon the size of the drone is important and the power output, but you're looking at the sound that's kicking out on the motors with that. If we take most drones that are around the 250 to 500 gram mark, then on the whole, once you have a bit of standoff, you don't have to go very, very far. We're talking, 100 meters, and they become very difficult to see visually. Obviously, when you are depending upon, just think about why things are seen, takes you back to your lessons of when you were in basic training. Silhouette and shadow are going to be the things that are going to, or silhouette, are going to be one of the big things that are going to really have a telltale drone. And the drone that's next to Soren will be significantly easier to see than say an Anafi USA that Dave's using. The other thing that we found that's really, really interesting was the pitch of the motor. So take the Anafi Thermal SE and the Anafi USA. They actually generate the same decibels of sound, but the Anafi USA is at a different pitch, and it's much, much more difficult to hear from a human point of view. So therefore, the standoff that you require is less. Equally, the other way to think about it is the sensor. How do you get what you want? So again, I'll use those two drones. The thermal has what I think it's a 11 times zoom, and yet the USA is a 32 times zoom. So it allows you to achieve what you need to do without getting as close. And I think we're used to, from a military point of view, you're doing a close target recce, you're on your hands and knees, or in fact on your belly, snurgling up to what you want to look at. And that's what we see. The behavior pattern, a lot of the guys in the military using the drones, they try and think of it the same way, rather than going, well, if I put it, hypothetically speaking, a kilometer up in the air, will they be able to see the drone or hear the drone? No. Can I see them? Yes. So that's on positioning. We have seen some military units try to use the ground to conceal drones. That would work. I think there's probably easier ways to achieve the same effect, if I'm honest. Use the drones to its strengths. On the final thing that Chris says to do with RF and audio and visual signature, this brings up a really, really interesting point, and it's to do with controlling drones with an operational context compared to a civilian context. So most of the drones, or the vast majority of the drones, are using a Wi-Fi enabled controlling element. Now, if you go to the US program that Dave has mentioned a few times, actually one of the components of that was not to use Wi-Fi. So it was from a GPS denied environment, and therefore it used the existing radio network that the US military use. Now, all the different militaries have a different way, and different frequencies within different countries are attributed to different elements. So one of the ways that we're working to the future is engaging with the end users. Like, for example, we've got a big demonstration at the end of May, and they're wanting to move into the direction of mesh networks, so controlled networks within themselves, so that those signals coming out, those emissions, are contained within their own entity. The other key thing here is to do with encryption on the drones. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, I think the DAF USA, 256-bit encryption.
USA's AES 512, which is
512,
outrageously high. Anything up to 256 is kind of the industry standard. Kind of anything more than that is just ridiculous. But someone's asked as well, is the signal encrypted Soren on the Lorenz system? So
yes.
I mean, I know that it is on the M300, so I imagine it's the same.
No, well, the whole thing here is that everything goes directly from the AI link and into the cloud, and this is encrypted according to military standard, and there's full documentation for this, because of course this was asked for by the defense and by the police, who already ordered the system. And to your comments, Matt, I fully agree with you on the, you could say, the footprint and the stealth part, because I think there'll be room for both kind of drones. Of course, we're looking into what comes up in the smaller category. Of course, that goes without saying. But what we already can do now with these kinds of drones on a distance of 1,000, 1,500 meters, I can almost recognize the workers going on the construction site here over 1 kilometer away with standard equipment payload at the moment. And let's just be honest, he will not have a clue that the drone is hanging out here. And I can see the letters on his vest that he's carrying from over here. So you can go in from several ways, but of course, stealth is very important. We have developed a special function where actually the AI link listens in on the remote. So it's not flown from the remote, it listens in. So you fly not angle-based like you do with the drone, you actually fly by vectors. This makes you able to program the way of flying so that you're not able to do these sudden acceleration, which often gives away the drone's identity, because that's what makes the noise when you suddenly accelerate. But even though you push your stick on your remote, it'll slowly accelerate without making too much noise. So there's also a potential in these ways of flying through an AI link like we have here.
Brilliant. I think that links in really well with what Matt summarised there on the impacts. I'm aware that we're coming towards the end. We're at 58 minutes, so we're nearly out of time. So what I want to do, just to kind of sum up, is pose a couple of questions to you, Dave, and to you, Soren, to wrap up. The main one for me, I think that would tie this together quite nicely, and we'll start with you, Dave, is what kind of organisations should now get in touch with you or with Coptrz to look at purchasing a system, a Planck system? What are the organisations that you want to come to us and request information?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sam. We think that the largest impact are operators who are on vehicles or on boats. So if you can imagine groups that their day-to-day job is on a patrol boat, and they need to have a drone that can go do some reconnaissance. Those are the people that we want to reach out and work with directly.
So certain areas of the military, but also search and rescue teams.
Yes,
that are operating coastally.
Rescue teams, security patrols. Anybody who needs data real time, right away, and is operating in a very dynamic environment.
Brilliant. Sorry, same to you guys. What kind of organisation should now get in touch and request more info on the Lorenz systems?
Well, our main segments are, as I mentioned, security and ports. So I would say ports who are looking into further digital ways of doing their work, and security companies, including police, for security companies who want to stand out from competition and being able to document that they actually do their work and be able to do added services. And police forces as well, because we know that they have a lot of DJI drones around, and the AI link will prove valuable to them. It will make the value of their investment even larger, and it could also prove the most worthy thing during a transition phase where they will work with these kind of drones. Maybe they're on the look for something else, but if they have flown them with the AI link and the system, their pilots will be totally familiar with this way of flying and this system. When new drones arrive, who'll be able to integrate with the AI link. So security companies, police on one side, ports who want to go into further digitalization on the other side. That's for sure.
Perfect. Perfect. And Matt, then, to sum up with you, I'm going to give you the impossible task of answering this question in a minute or less. What does the future hold for drones in defense?
That's the $1 million question. So in my little crystal ball, looking at it, first of all, it's exceptionally fast moving. And I think it's something that traditional defense cannot maintain. Traditional procurement channels are not able to keep up to date with the innovations that we're seeing all across the world. So it's going to change fast. I think seeing these as tools to be able to increase situational awareness, do a myriad of different effects, our understanding is only going to increase. So it is a huge, huge opportunity for defense. And for those that embrace it, they're going to get a massive, massive benefit.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that was as much as we can expect. As you said, crystal ball in it. I think you've done a pretty good effort there. Well, look, guys, thanks so much for you three for joining us here today. Thanks everyone that's tuned in. We have had some more questions that have come in, a bit more technical based. Most of those obviously Dave and Soren based on their systems. So what we'll do is we'll get some answers either from you guys direct. If I can answer them, I will, and not bother you, but we'll pull you into those and make sure every question asked is answered after the video. But yeah, all that remains to be said is Matt, Dave, Soren, thanks so much for joining us. All you guys that tuned in, thanks very much for your time. And we'll see you for the next one, which is probably in about 15 minutes, since we're doing these constantly all day for the next 2 days. So yeah, if you want any more of my webinars over the next couple of days, I will see you soon. And thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, gents.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everyone.